and it's a full team effort to get everybody to the finish line.
And it works. It works. That's the great part.
Hello, we're here today to talk about how to turn one household into two households. And I'm joined today by Wendy Rawlings, who is a mental health professional. She's a counselor and a collaborative professional. And also with Jennie Bouska, who is a certified divorce financial neutral analyst person, who is also a collaborative divorce professional. And I'm Teena Johnson. I'm an attorney, a collaborative attorney who works with people in a collaborative process primarily. Hi, the two of you. How do you turn a
Hello.
household into two?
Well, I'll jump in. It's a multi-step yet work together process. So as the certified divorce financial analyst, the collaborative financial neutral on a divorce process, what I help people do is figure out the financial side of things. How do we turn this one household into two, as you said, financially? And then Wendy gets to help couples do that via the parenting plan and uncoupling, correct, Wendy?
That's correct. Yeah. Depending on where the parents are in the process, sometimes their children know, and sometimes they don't. And sometimes there are no children, but they've been married for long enough that it's really emotionally hard to uncouple and move forward. So that's what mental health family specialists do is we help if there's children involved, we help parents come up with the narrative they're going to tell their children where both parents wear the white hats and because they're both parents, children are part of both parents, and we want the children to love and respect their parents. But there's also a moral to the story. So they don't feel like they're destined to divorce like their parents did. It also helps them understand what went wrong and where they are going to live and how they're going to function post-divorce. And we also help the parents write the parenting plan worksheet, which then we turn into the attorneys for legal preparation.
Thanks, Wendy. Jenny, where do you start when you're working with a couple that are trying to turn one house into two?
Always at the beginning. So we start by gathering information. So the beginning is always just the gathering part. Gathering information, I ask for a ton of information and we just try to get a good picture of what are their finances. And that's a two-part picture as well. So we have what do you have? What are we going to divide your assets and debts? And then what do you spend? What are your living expenses? Because that's a major part too. And they go hand in hand. So as we go through a collaborative divorce process, we hit the part that most people want to start at, which is answering the question, how are we going to do this? And that is, well, great. Let's talk about that. Let's discuss it. Let's brainstorm that. What are the possibilities? And we start by saying, what are your interests? They may come to us and say, we both want spouse A to keep the house and or spouse B to keep the house, or they may already have their ideas put in place, but then there's always follow-up questions. So how do we do this? I need to move out. Can I afford it? And so I help people just understand the numbers and see if we have spouse A keep the house, then how do we accommodate spouse B's living expenses? And, that then leads to a conversation about child support and spousal support and where are the children going to go? So it is an interesting process to go through for our clients, but I think that as we go through it, they start to see everything unfold and then it becomes less apprehensive. Like they start to understand and let it sink in how we are going to do this, which is a nice place for them to be.
And I think it's important to mention that Jenny and I are both neutrals. The financial and the family specialist are both neutrals. We're working with both parents. We are keeping our stance neutral. We're working them both through it as they as they can. And usually we meet together with them. Sometimes we meet individually. Sometimes I'll meet with the children. It depends on, and not for therapy, but just to help them understand their parents' divorce. Sometimes I will get their viewpoint about what they want the parenting plan to look like, depending on their ages, and help the parents start to learn to co-parent together from, again, two houses, because it's turning the one home into two. And so parenting from different homes is different and it can be a challenge, but we're both neutral. And so you can talk to both of us and we're not positional at all.
So when both of you have talked about neutrals, tell me more about that. How does that work in a collaborative divorce situation?
So for what I do or what we do as neutrals is we work with the couple and we can work, I generally will work with people sometimes one-on-one, usually together. And any information that people share with me is shared with a team. And it is from a place of we're just looking at numbers. We're looking at neutrality. How can we help you move on to the next step in your life, in your livelihood, and do so in a fashion that's equitable to each of you. So, for example, if somebody came to me and they were like, I just want to take him to the bank and take him for everything he's got, we're not gonna do that here. We're just
Collaborative.
look at things and take it back a step and just say, does this work for the two of you?
Yeah. And for me, the neutrality, I think of the family and especially the children as my clients, and how to get their parents to be the best parents they can. How do we get the parents through their own emotional difficulties with ending a relationship and living in two different homes? How do we, there's a lot of grieving that goes on usually, and then helping the parents learn to co-parent together. So not taking sides at all. We're just looking at the whole unit and say, okay, this unit is now existing in two different places. There's no longer a husband-wife unit, but there's still a family unit if there's children. Or if there are no children, there's some grieving going on at that lost husband-wife unit that sometimes gets reflected in the decisions made in the divorce. So I'm there to just help smooth that out. I'm often at the meetings with we have bigger meetings with the attorney, financial, and the clients, and I'm often at those to help facilitate that, kind of keep my finger on the pulse and keep the meetings running efficiently so that we don't get bogged down and have to have more meetings, because those meetings can be expensive if there's lots of them. So I help and Jenny helps run those to keep them efficient so that we don't have too many of them.
So the work that you're doing with the clients outside of the meetings, how does that get to the attorneys that are also working on the case? How does that whole team process work?
Well, I write my notes up and I just write the relevant parts. I don't do the whole thing, but just the parts that are important for the attorneys to know if I've made any agreements, if the parents have made agreements or the couples made agreements with each other. Those are always noted and given to the attorneys. And then before we have the bigger meetings with the attorneys and the clients together, the professional team, which is all the professionals without the clients, meet together. We coordinate, make sure we're ready to go. Then we have the meeting, and then we have a debrief after to do any planning that we need to do for the future. So we are, as professionals, moving the case forward as quickly as we can, and always working with each other, keeping each other informed.
Thank you, Wendy. Jenny, do you have anything to add to that?
Same. It's email. If I'm working with clients, and what I try to do is make sure that everybody has any updates to a living expense report or a property report, any given scenarios that we may have worked on creating, all of that goes out to the full team. And the goal is always at least a week in advance of a full team meeting, which then gives everybody a chance to review it, as well as the attorneys to review it with their clients, so that when we go into a full team meeting, that it's as efficient as possible and nobody's caught off guard with new information.
So back to our question about how do you turn one home into two homes, the clients work with the both of you in your separate realms and you bring it all to the team so the attorneys, like me, have this information as well. And so we all work together to help the clients actually make that happen. Is that right?
You got it. It's from a number side of things, it's when we're creating scenarios and looking at things, if I were talking about the house, for example, and we had a scenario where it was one person keeps the house and one person keeps, let's say, a retirement asset to offset the house. That's for property. And then if we're looking at the living expenses, it's just like, okay, person keeping the house, maybe they have a super low interest rate, which is amazing. And that seems to be where we're at currently. Then what we want to do is make sure that we have enough living expenses for more expensive housing for the person who's not remaining in the house. And where our fabulous attorneys come into play as well is we might get creative with all sorts of different scenarios, but our attorneys need to make sure that it can go into a legal document to make sure that both spouses are protected and that it can be enforced as we go through this process and beyond. So it really is it is full court press and it's a full team effort to get everybody to the finish line.
And it works. It works. That's the great part.
It does work. Thank you both for sharing so much information about this question. Clients often ask me this question: how are we going to be able to afford this? How are we going to turn one house into two houses? So thank you very much.
Thanks.